I always thought that was the Michigan flag. Could you give me a copy of that letter?
Include.
Gave her a clear note, gave her some different drugs. Told her not to do this and not to do that. I'm doing it. She hasn't got enough. She hasn't got enough guts to ask me to cook it.
See you noon, 7. So we'll call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, with that, we'll have a roll call of the board members. And
Augustinelli,
Here.
Robertson,
Here.
Klein, is he here? No, he's not. Absent and excused. Racine,
Here.
Fudge,
Here.
and D. Good.
here.
And it's noted that McManus is also absent and excused.
Thank you very much. And the next order of business is public comment, but before that, I think our planning director is going to have, I understand that a number of you may be here regarding your interest in short-term rentals. It is not on our agenda tonight, but I think just for the record, John's going to share a few, the status of that, so it might inform any comments that folks want to make.
Okay, thank you. This might help everybody kind of get some context of what the Planning Commission has recently been talking about. But over the last several years, there's been efforts to require short-term rentals in communities throughout Michigan. And most of those pieces of legislation that were drafted were in a form that we weren't really too concerned about. They weren't very comprehensive. They were really never went forward. But recently, there was a set of bills that were introduced earlier this year, back in February in the House. The main bill is Bill 5438, and it's part of a suite of bills that would be very extensive and impact every community in Michigan. And part of that would actually be mandating that short-term rentals be provided. And so that currently in Garfield Township, we do not permit any of them. So we recognize that this set of bills is different than in previous years. It also has a taxation portion to it, so it's quite extensive. And it was our feeling that we should at least be prepared should that go forward. So in response, staff was recommending, at least to the Planning Commission, to have some discussions related to providing them only in the commercial districts. And the commercial districts would be the general commercial, the planned shopping center, and the highway commercial. So these are in districts where currently we allow hotels, which are used by right in those areas. These would be permitted through commercial district housing development, which would be through a special use permit process. So it's very limited in where it would be located. Now, we don't know if that would conform to those bills should they become law, but at least gets us in a position, should those move forward, that we would be at least prepared to deal with them in a way that we feel that could be managed through the township and not impact residential neighborhoods. One of the things, we have not seen any activity on these bills. They were introduced in the committee in the House back in February. There hasn't been any movement. They haven't been voted out of committee. There hasn't, There's no companion bills that were presented in the Senate or anything like that. So at this point, if nothing happens by the end of this session, which actually ends in this calendar year, then that process has to restart and they have to be reintroduced. We're not expecting anything at this time. And again, I think it's been the feeling of when I've been in conversation with the supervisor and so forth, is that we would only really be seriously considering these should the state require that mandate through state legislation. So at this time, we're just trying to at least have initial discussions with the Planning Commission in the form of an amendment. It would be in a form of an amendment to the zoning ordinance, but then also a separate licensing ordinance could be considered by the Township Board. Planning Commission would never vote on these. These would just be discussions at the Planning Commission and then make any recommendations to the Township Board. Ultimately, only the Township Board has the ability to approve any of these ordinances. So that's kind of where we're at this point.
Thank you, John. And also, so you can see from our agenda tonight that it is scheduled to be short-term rentals. Further discussion is on the agenda for August 28th. Certainly, people could make public comment at that meeting as well, but at that time, it would just be discussion, not an actual public hearing regarding a change to the ordinance, which would also be required and would be noticed to the community when that happened.
Correct.
All right. Well, so with that, if anybody wanted to make any public comment, feel free to step up, state your name and your address, and there are guidelines that we'd appreciate it if you could follow.
Certainly, thank you. My name's Ken Kaufman. I live at 1726 Northwest Silver Lake Road, and I read the ticker story of July 29 about Garfield Township's consideration to allow short-term rentals in certain commercial areas, as just described by John, in light of potential legislation that would allow communities to regulate short-term rentals if a statewide law were to pass. So I strongly support the Planning Commission's proactive direction in this matter, as we want to keep short-term rentals out of residential areas and keep that decision with local communities. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to make a comment at this time? There's another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting as well. All right, well, thank you for your comment. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, review and approval of the agenda and indication of any conflicts of interest.
I move we approve the agenda. Support.
We have a motion by Racine and support by Robertson. Any further discussion? All right, with that, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, same? The motion passes. Let's now review the minutes for our last meeting on July 24th. Any comments or concerns?
Mr. Chairman, there's a little typo on the last page.
A typo on the last page. What do we have?
It says that the name of the property is
Petter.
Pitter, and it's not, it's Potter.
Potter. Okay.
Just a
We'll
typo.
Make sure to make that edit.
It's item 10A.
I think in item 6A, it made reference to side yard setbacks would be 19 or 20 feet. I think it probably meant to say 10 feet or 20 feet. 19 doesn't apply anywhere.
That'd be very specific, yeah. 10, that would make the most sense.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes with these changes of number 6 and number 10.
Support.
Motion by Augustinelli, support by Fudge. Any further discussion? With that, we'll have a vote. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same. And that motion passes as well. Thank you very much. All right, we will move on now to item number 4 on our agenda, correspondence.
The only item we have is the notice from Elmwood Township that they have issued a notice of intent to prepare a master plan, so that there's no action needed. That will eventually come at some point when they have a draft plan that will be something for the Township Planning Commission to review and comment on. And also, we will provide in your packet, next meeting, the communication that went to the city of Traverse City, the letter, just so you have that, regarding their master plan.
Okay, thank you. Well, then we're on to item number 5, reports. Anything to report from the Township Board, Molly?
Yeah, we had a special meeting. We had a meeting last night. There wasn't much on the agenda, but the special meeting the week before. And we had a lot of discussion about the housing / beta project. And we have had so much discussion about that on this board. And the way that our stipulations came down were that Beta would be able to get their C of O when construction began. Well, then there was no definition of what is beginning construction. So what the board settled on at the meeting was we would use the definition that's in the code that's used for building, and that is footings, slab, I don't know what the other items were, but
Foundations, yeah, that's,
basically you had to start the building. And I know we have had a lot of discussion about walls up, or initially I think we started with people had to be living there, and there was all kinds of talk. But so what the board decided on was that definition. That's it. And I'm not sure what the status is. Did they get their C of O?
yes, they received, so as part of that too, they also had to complete the transfer station as well, and some of the open space improvements. In the case of the transfer station, they received a temporary C of O, and as well as on the main building. And then the open space improvements were pretty limited, though some of those were the trails that they will also share in the installation along with the Housing Commission. So we received a performance guarantee for those trails in the amount of $10,000. So we'll hold that until those trails are completed. And again, that will be done along with the Housing Commission project. So,
Okay.
Okay.
ZBA, anything to report?
No meeting.
No meeting. Parks and Rec met last week, and we started on our process of just discussing investments we'd like to recommend to the Township Board for next year's budget, investments in our parks. And that's all I have to report from Parks. Anything to report from Joint Planning Commission?
No, I think Joe gave a report 2 weeks ago about our July 15th meeting. We just meet quarterly, so probably no more report on that for another couple of months.
Okay, very good. Any reports from staff, Planning Department?
it's got a couple items. One, people have probably seen some grading activities that are going on at the southwest corner of Hammond Road and Garfield Road. That's the site that's going to be the new Kingsley Lumber. It's zoned industrial. That would be a use permitted by right. So they are going through the site plan review process. We received their application and we'll be working with them. There are some issues with that in terms of the driveways. We're trying, as you recall, a few years ago, the Planning Commission approved for the surgery, the oral surgeon that was supposed to go in there did not have a driveway off of Hammond Road, and we want to maintain that. But we've run into a little bit of a problem with, and I don't want to get too much into this, but the storage facility that's going in over on the southeast corner, they have a driveway on Garfield, and that has impacted the placement of the driveway for this facility. So it's a bit of a technicality, but they're going to be having their driveway on their adjacent parcel, which they already own, which does allow them to have an additional driveway onto Hammond Road. So working with the applicant on that and trying to see if there's any way that we can avoid having that go forward, because that's been a big priority of ours. So it's could be just it's just the way the ordinance is and the way the things that worked out on that site plan right now. But again, that's at the very early on, beginning in that process. Also, I just, one item I do want to address the planning commission, and maybe we can talk about this later on in the agenda, is that we've received an application for a High Tops restaurant in the K1 Karting Center, which is the former Sears building. So back in December of 2022, the Planning Commission approved the K1 Karting Center that's under construction right now. That only included about half of the square footage there in the former Sears building, so there you have some remainder. That's where the High Tops Bar Restaurant is planning to go into that. So they'll need to amend that site plan, so that will be required to come back to the Planning Commission. And if you recall, we deferred some of the site improvements, particularly in the back area, some landscape islands and so forth. Those will have to be now installed as part of this kind of second phase in terms of the redevelopment of the Sears. So I did want to kind of maybe mention that to you when we, maybe under other business and items for our next agenda. Because I was wondering if maybe that might be something that's considered at the the August 28th meeting.
Molly?
The liquor license on that High Tops, we granted them a liquor license when they were going into the Grand Traverse Mall. Are they transferring, or what's the status of that?
I don't know exactly, but they are required to go through that process to relocate it to the new address. That will be one of the other requirements. And I believe that has to go through the state of Michigan. I'm not sure the sign off from the township board on that.
Thanks.
John?
Would this restaurant, perhaps going into that spot, would that trigger the total revision of the plan that you've talked with us about before, to get the different owners to make the amendments necessary for new activities to start happening out there? Or is this not quite major enough to do that?
No, it's not altering the building footprint, and it's anything that alters the building footprint that requires them to submit that comprehensive site plan. They are working on that, to our knowledge, that they've retained Gosling Zubeck, and so they are supposed to be working on that design, the whole site plan for the Cherryland Center. But this one would just be, again, an internal part of that former Sears building, so it wouldn't really trigger that.
One other thing on your comment about the Hammond Road access. I'm really hoping that you can figure out a way that there's not another driveway on Hammond Road.
Yeah, there's, one of the things that we're expecting at some point here too is that the UPS facility, which is a couple properties over, might be expanding, and we're wondering if there might be a way to work with them in providing some access to the rear of those properties out onto Garfield that could potentially alleviate maybe, removing one of those driveways out there. It's hard to say. It's just one of those things where, I wouldn't say it's a loophole, but it's just one of those things where some of the standards of the road commission and our requirements kind of conflicted a little bit in terms of, and it's just the way that they've designed it that's kind of become a little bit challenging, so. That's
Any
all.
other? Okay. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for that report. Well, I think from there, we move on to unfinished business, and the first item of unfinished business is PD 2024-60, zoning ordinance proposed amendment, R3 district public hearing.
So this is an item that the Planning Commission has studied and is now presenting for adoption and recommendation to the Township Board. And this amends the R3, which is the multifamily residential district in the zoning ordinance. And it is to allow triplexes and quadplexes as uses permitted by right in the R3 district. So those triplexes and quadplexes are currently permitted by special use permit. This would just stream that a little bit to allow those units that allow for 3 dwelling units or 4 dwelling units to be permitted by right. They would still require a review by the planning department for site plan review. And it would alter then anything that is 5 units or more would still require a special use permit by the planning commission. And there's also just some subtle changes to that. We've provided for minimum lot areas, minimum lot widths, and minimum side yard setbacks for those.
Any commission questions or concerns before we go to the public hearing? All right, with that, we'll open the public hearing. Please feel free to step up to the podium and state your name and address and any comments you have regarding the proposed ordinance change. Don't all rush at once. Well, I think with that, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
Seems to me we've been looking at this for a while, and it makes perfectly good sense. We're just talking the R3 area, and it's already allowing duplexes, so allowing triplexes and quadplexes just maybe gets us a little more density in the same area, and seemed like a smart thing to do.
I'll make the motion then that the proposed amendment to the Garfield Township zoning ordinance as attached to the Planning Department report 2024-60 be recommended for adoption by the Township Board.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Robertson, support by Augustinelli. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same. All right, we've passed that motion. Thank you all very much. And with that, we'll move on to unfinished business item B, PD 2024-61, Potter's Home Retreat Bed and Breakfast Special Use Permit follow-up.
All right, thank you, Chris. As a reminder, recap that this was reviewed draft findings of fact at the July meeting. There's been kind of a few meetings of analysis on this property on Potter Road, where they are proposing a bed and breakfast. Part of the reason for the extensive analysis was looking at the enforcement history of this property, where there had been a short-term rental. The property is zoned agricultural. Bed and breakfast is permitted via special use permit approval. And this is what the applicant was applying for, but based on sort of what we heard at the public hearing, staff also made a site visit to this property, and sort of a timeline. We built a timeline into our report, both for this one and the previous one for review of findings of fact. Planning Commission at the last meeting asked for a legal review of the proposed findings of fact. So we did receive that. The additional attachment to this report is the letter from Olson Howard, the township attorney. So they commented on a few things, and we also summarized some of their comments in our report as well. They kind of took a look at our findings and took a look at the key pieces of information, facts relevant to the case, definitions from the zoning ordinance. They, from my reading of it, they concluded that Planning Commission could either be justified in going forward as the original findings proposed for denial of this application. They also offered a potential way to do approval with conditions. So staff, in reading this, we are of the opinion, so they said sort of either way would be justified. We are still recommending denial of the application, as we had in July, for a couple of reasons. We had already put the findings together, and that was sort of our staff's recommendation, going line by line of each of the standards for both bed and breakfast uses, as in the supplemental use standards in section 713, and the standards for all special use permits. That this application did not meet all of those. The other sort of analyzing like what could be a potential way to approve with conditions, the suggestions sort of read like they could do it on the condition that they do this certain improvement to the house. We talked about putting back in the stairs so that it's a single unit. Talked about assuring that it's going to be this or that. And we were of the opinion that the more conditions there are like that, like feasibly anyone could do any number of things to their property to make it conform to a use. Our view of the application is that's not what was in the application. That is not, appears to be what was proposed. It does not appear to meet those conditions as it was proposed in the application. Specifically with the connecting the stairs between the upper and lower levels, there's evidence that, or appeared to be evidence that not only are they not there, is that they used to be there and they were taken out specifically. So it seemed to us that based on what was in the application and in those materials that this did not meet the threshold for approving this special use permit. And even though there might be a way to heavily condition it, the more prudent path seemed to be to deny the application. The ordinance allows for after 1 year, it does not allow the same application to be submitted for 1 year. And given that property improvements often take time, if someone on this property wanted to make said improvements or put something in an application that would meet those standards, they would be welcome to do so at that time. But at this time, based on what was in the application, this is our recommendation.
Steve, did the applicant provide us any additional information, or has it just died?
No additional information from the applicant. The only new thing since the previous meeting was the attorney's review.
Thank you.
John?
Personally, I concur with Steve's analysis and suggestions. Sounds like the township attorney came up with an idea that we could do one of two things, but I think the reasoning behind the recommendation to deny it is persuasive to me. There'd just be so many conditions that it seems like this is appropriate. They've had a lot of time to amend the application if they want to. We started on this months ago, and there's still no connecting stairway, and there's no separate entrance, and all those things that are the deficiencies have not been cured or addressed or promised to be cured or addressed. So I support staff's recommendation that we deny the application.
I'd make a motion, we deny the application.
We got a first.
Chris, you
We've
about
got
to say
findings of
something?
fact to
Yeah.
look at
Actually,
first, two parts.
Before you make the motion, actually, I have one more question, if that's okay.
Go ahead, go right ahead, charge it.
Has the applicant seen the memorandum from the Olson Bisdock? Olson Howard?
I don't know specifically. I believe the applicants are always contacted by administrative staff when packets go out or when agendas go out.
Usually when we post the packet, it's usually the Monday before the meeting, and usually staff, the administrative staff sends it out to the applicant. So the letter from Olson Howard was in as part of this packet. So it's the same packet that you have on your desk. So I believe that would have been sent to the applicant. I don't know for certain.
Okay.
And we were not contacted by the applicant in any, asking about anything in the packet. So.
Well, the only aspect I'm, I guess, concerned about, and I would look for the rest of the Planning Commission's thoughts, I did sense a willingness to concede some of these changes, but a hesitance to invest in them from the applicant. And I'm wondering, the burden that I'm concerned about is having to wait a year. I think it would be appropriate to have a new application that addresses the issues brought forth by our attorney, as well as the issues brought forth by staff, but would is it unnecessarily burdensome for them to have to wait a year to do that? And again, maybe we discussed this previously, and I've let it sit in my mind, could they withdraw the application? If they had had adequate time to review this, consider withdrawing it, and submit a new one, and avoid the burden of the year?
Trying to find the exact wording in that
Mhm.
section as well. It is,
You know, the applicant has obviously been aware of the discussions that have been here at the Planning Commission. We've not received any communication from the applicant that there was any interest in changing the application. So
Okay.
our findings are based on the application as it's been presented, and there's been no alteration to that, so.
yeah, so the actual language, I just want to read it into the record as
Mhm.
well, just so we, yeah. It's section 423F. Section 423 is special use permits, so the whole process of special use permits. Subsection F is subsequent applications. An application for a special use permit may be withdrawn at any time if the application has been advertised in compliance with state law. An application requesting substantially the same use on all or part of the same described land shall not be reconsidered within 1 year of withdrawal. No application for a special use permit for any lot or parcel that requests the same use and same conditions shall be considered within 1 year of a final decision denying the application.
Pretty clear.
Yeah, very clear, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion that the Planning Commission wants to have on that? Bob, if you'd like to make a
Okay, let's
motion?
try it again.
So there's two,
I skipped the
actually, one,
finding of facts.
actually, one more thing too. The township attorney's review also recommend, we've always typically done findings of fact as the standards in actually section 423E, which goes through each of the special use standards. We had started the heading findings of fact at that one. In the last report, the township attorney also recommended the analysis of the supplemental use standards, which are in section 713, to just include that in the headings of finding of fact, because that's also part of the standards for this use. So in this report, both are listed under there, but they're substantially the same material that you reviewed in July.
So by making the motion, that's included, your concerns included in the motion that Bob would intend to make?
It is including, yeah, all of, just so you know what findings of fact you are considering with this motion is the standards for bed and breakfast establishment, 713, which is 1 through 11, and then the special use permit approval criteria, 423E, which is its own 1 through 11. So all of that is considered findings of fact in this report.
And that's part of your,
That is part of the
Or-
draft motion, so.
yeah, it's
Excellent.
there.
Mhm.
Bob?
Okay, let's try it again. Make a motion that the finding of facts for application SUP 2024-01 as presented in Planning Department Report 2024-61 and being made a part of this motion be adopted.
Support?
We have a motion from Fudge and support from Robertson. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same? That motion is passed. Bob, would you like to make another motion?
No, but I will. A motion, this application SUP 2024-01 for a special use permit for a bed and breakfast establishment on parcel, number 05-036-025-40 at 492 West Potter Road be denied.
For the reasons listed below.
Well, I think it should just be denied. We can do the whole thing if you like.
Or no?
Yeah, we do need to.
If you may
You need to
continue,
state the
yeah,
reasons.
For the
Okay,
reasons.
for the reasons listed below and those described in this report, excuse me, which indicates that the use of the property is described in the application does not meet the definitions of a bed and breakfast. And there's 3 items listed.
I'll support that.
All right, we have a motion by Fudge, support by Racine. Is there any further discussion on the motion? And with that, we'll have a vote on the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same? Thanks everyone very much. The motion's passed. And with that, we're moving on to unfinished business, item C, PD 2024-62, Tower North Wireless Comm Facility Special Use Permit follow-up.
So this is actually just a brief update, since this was tabled at the last meeting as well. There was a representative here last time from Tower North proposing a wireless communication tower on part of the Alpers Mining site on Zimmerman Road. If you recall, at that meeting, discussed their application with a lot of discussion specifically on the proposed location of the tower, looking at the supplemental use standards for wireless communication facility. Didn't meet the setbacks requirements in the location they had proposed. They are currently trying to figure out moving that location within the site, although that requires supposedly for them to do some of that analysis, kind of redo based on the new proposed location. How does that affect everything that was kind of in their submittal package the previous time? So we did hear from them that actually after this went out, but we did hear from them that they were expecting it to continue to be tabled anyway. They're still working on it, but that they are working on it. And once they have something to submit, we will take a look at that and have it on the next available agenda. So no action needed. It's still tabled, so I think it's just considered tabled. I don't think they need a motion to continue tabling it, so, okay.
Nope.
Yeah, so
Thank you for that report.
No action. Nope.
All right, next on the agenda, new business. Item A, PD 2024-63, French Manor Lafreniere Special Use Permit Major Amendment, intro.
So we received a application for a special use permit. It's an amendment to a special use permit for an existing adult foster care facility at 3090 Lafreniere Road. It's on the east side of Lafreniere Road, south of South Airport Road. Site is roughly about 2.74 acres, and currently there's a facility on that, as I mentioned, and they're looking to do 2 additions that would add roughly about 3,600 square feet to that facility. So this is an amendment process to go through. So it's essentially the same as a special use permit process. So this is the introduction. And we've did a review of the application and completeness review, and have been in communication with the applicant's representative and their engineer, and they are making some headway on that. There are some outstanding items, but just for the most part, should be able to be addressed. Things like, for instance, the landscaping, it's a well established vegetation on the site, so they'll be able to have credits for those. So we just need that documented to some degree, at least particularly on the front part of it. The access to the site is a little tricky, even though it has a lot of property that fronts on Lafreniere Road. This is the part of Lafreniere Road where it's going down, so down the hill towards South Airport. So there's a sizable retaining walls that go all along the west side of that property. So the access is actually a shared access that serves a few different parcels coming off Lafreniere Road. So we want to verify that there's the legal access there in terms of the easements and so forth. But we're working through it, like as I mentioned, with the applicant. There's just some other items. Any changes or improvements to the lighting would have to be addressed. Also, at this point, why we typically would require sidewalks because of the nature of this location here. And while there appears to be sidewalks along Lafreniere Road, technically those are just paved shoulders or behind the curb area, but that is essentially what's functioning as the sidewalk. There's no ability to add anything more than what's already there. So that's about all we have at this point.
Does the planning commission have any questions or concerns?
Is the applicant here to give us any info?
Yeah, the applicant's here.
Would you like to step forward and make any comment?
Dan Brown, Birdco Incorporated. We're the design-build contractor for this project. As John mentioned, this is an existing adult foster care facility that's been in the community for quite a while now. And some of the improvements that are going to come also with this project include, parking lot improvements, stormwater improvements, utility improvements, and the installation of fire lanes and turnaround areas. We think that this addition will only enhance the site and for the continued growth of this business.
Any questions for the applicant?
Nope, not from me.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, if there's no discussion, go ahead, John.
Just a question for staff. Have you either got enough, or are you confident you're going to get enough information applicant-wise to have a public hearing as your report suggests maybe we could have next month?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been in contact with the engineer, and they've been working on those items, and it assured me that they'll have those in time for the public hearing.
My first thought or reaction to this is it probably is going to be a no-brainer. It ought to happen. One thing I think we do want to look at, you mentioned that access easement, and even though it doesn't look like any additional property is being accessed, there's going to be more people coming onto it, so it's not unheard of for the underlying fee owner that grants an easement to squawk that somebody's overburdening the easement by putting on too much use. So you'll want to take a look at that easement, see what it says, and get whatever assurances there need to be that this proposed addition's not going to run afoul of any continued proposed use of that easement.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'll make the motion.
All right.
Make the motion that application SUP 1990-07-A for a special use permit for the expansion of an existing adult foster care facility at 3090 Lafreniere Road be scheduled for a public hearing at the September 11th, 2024 Planning Commission regular meeting.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Robertson with support by Fudge. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All right, we'll have a vote. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed, same? Thank you very much. Motion passes. All right. Next on our new business agenda, we have PD 2024-66, Copper Ridge PUD sign review.
Okay, we have received an application for a directional sign for building number 5. That's planned to be occupied by Thurlby Clinic in the Copper Ridge Plan Unit Development. So the building side, the address one is the
Which one?
4110? 4110.
Somewhere down here.
Yes, that one right there.
All right.
Where?
4110 is this building.
Yeah,
On the site plan, they've got building letters. And I noticed
Right.
in your report, it said Building 5, and I was trying to find out where's Building 5, because all the buildings seem to be lettered, not numbered, but,
there's a combination of both.
so where's Building 5?
It's basically, it is Building D.
Okay, Building D. All right, thank you.
So this is on the east side of the building, and there's an entrance that's going to be located at the ground level off of that east side. So the see the location of the sign and then the type of the sign with the profile. There's a provision in section 630, which is the sign chapter within the ordinance, and allows for directional signs at a maximum of 6 square feet. So that's what they're proposing. It's just basically a simple sign that says Thurlby Clinic main entrance. So,
Polly?
So it's gonna be a little roof with this sign running across the front of it? Is that what we're looking at? Yeah,
Pull up the,
yeah, maybe I could ask Kevin Queries here,
Okay.
the applicant, he could maybe
Hi.
explain it looks like it's gonna be like a little overhang. with
It's
the-
going to be an overhang. I mean, it's not necessarily going to have a roof per se. I mean, it's basically a metal sign that comes out with sort of a face to it. So it's not necessarily a roof. It's see-through. There won't be a roof on it. It's just kind of a metal.
three-sided kind
Yeah,
of sign.
Correct.
Are there any others like that up in that area, or?
There's not of this type, but the association has preliminarily approved it for it goes with the flow of Copper Ridge.
Okay.
John?
I think for the first time in the 30-plus years I've been on the planning commission, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this sign.
Wow, that goes down in the history books.
So I'm gonna move that application SUP 2000-08-N for Thurlby Clinic in Building 5 at the Copper Ridge PUD be approved.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Racine and support by Augustinelli. Any further discussion on the motion? With that, we'll vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Same. And the motion passes.
Thank you, guys.
Ray. All right. We have another opportunity for, and our public is getting up to comment or leave?
We're doing that project, so we're happy you approved that.
Oh, very good. Well, as our public is exiting the room, I think we have no further public comment to be had, so there's nothing on our agenda for other business. Would you like to review with us the items for the next agenda?
Yeah, I'll just cover it, Steve.
Okay.
So we got the zoning ordinance, sign ordinance will be coming some more on the section, well, it's not a sign ordinance, it's section 630, which is part of the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, and then talk about short-term rentals a little bit. I think from their understanding on the short-term rentals, it was more kind of seeing where they're located within, the commercial districts and so forth, but also the licensing ordinance that would go companion to that. One of the things that, should this come to fruition, and we are required and mandated to do this, I would think one of the things that licensing ordinance is not going to be as onerous as some of the ones that other communities have to deal with that typically have a limited number. I mean, we could do that, but it would be, that's usually where it becomes very contentious, is when you have a limited number. But anyways, we can talk a little bit more. I don't think we're going to need to do a lot more discussion on that. I think we kind of are framing it, and we'll respond to some of your comments from the last study session on that. But the other thing I just wanted to mention was that high tops, if that would be something that you would want to, should they provide us with they need some additional items to their application, but is that something that you would be interested for the August 28th, or would you prefer just to go to your regular meeting, which would be September 11th? So.
John, is that a one and done sort of here? Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't require a hearing, and again, it's an amendment to the K-1, so one of the things I've expressed to the applicant, I want everything that was part of the K-1 site plan packet to be replicated for this, even though it gets us a little bit further down the road. They will still have additional space in that Sears for other uses as well.
Well, what are the thoughts of the commission? Should we squeeze it into an otherwise perhaps light agenda?
So why
or-
not? We don't have a lot on the agenda.
Are they asking for it?
Well, they're moving along with that. It's something that I said I'd bring it up to them, but it's up to you guys. It's not typical practice, so.
Yeah, my first reaction would be to hold off, because we try to preserve our study sessions for studying and talk about, like in this case, talk about whatever we need to on the sign stuff and short-term rentals. And occasionally, if it's something that somebody really is legitimately got pressing time, and especially if we feel at all guilty about the fact that their time is pressed, then maybe we help them, but I don't see those things happening here. What's going on elsewhere on September 11th? Do we have a very heavy agenda already for September 11th, or do we
We'll have
know?
the public hearing for French Manor. We may have something on Tower North. Do we have any new
Applications.
We run we're past our deadline, I believe, for September 11th.
I don't think we got any actual submittals. There's been some ones that we know are kind of in the works, trying to get to a submittal, but they're not quite there yet. I don't think we got a new submittal
No, we
for
don't.
the planning commission, yeah.
I guess if September 11th isn't swamped, I'd probably feel better if we just did
It's fine with me.
the high tops on September 11th,
Okay.
like we normally would. If we do an exception, it's not the end of the world, but we're going to get asked for more exceptions. You just know it.
But they're not even pushing.
No, it doesn't sound like they are.
Well, and it's not a new application. I mean, it is a new application. Sometimes I think when you've made those willingness to do something in the study session, it's been for an active application that's already been introduced to the planning commission, so.
Seems like a reasonable conclusion, then we'll wait till September 11th.
Is there any deadline on that? They got that liquor license a couple years ago, and they haven't used it yet. I thought that was kind of the,
I don't know what all the
I don't believe there's any
regulations-
time limitation to it.
They own that.
They own that license, and
well, the township gave it to them, and there was 3 other people that wanted it, and they gave it to them to
Yes.
get the boost for the economy, or
Yes.
I mean, and now they're just sitting with it. That's
They're-
a little bit of a
And we
like
had
I said.
discussion about that. What
How
happens if
long
we,
they don't
not
use it?
how long, but we can't take it back. So once we give it to somebody, it's
Well, can they
kinda
sell it?
theirs.
yes,
Sell it.
Yeah, it's got value.
yeah, it's got value.
I know.
There's a secondary market out there for liquor licenses in the
I'm
state of
sure.
Michigan. I think they have intent to move forward with this. The K1, I don't know if you've been over there, they've been sprucing up the building. They've got the new sign where the old Sears is, it's been painted, and they've put in some of those landscaping islands. They will have to put in there's 2 more landscaping islands that they'll have to install there. Also, they're gonna have to seal coat the entire back side and restripe it as well.
So am I to understand correctly that one could legally drink and drive electric cars on an enclosed track indoors?
Yes,
I don't.
with a
yeah, I don't-
helmet.
With a helmet?
That makes all the difference.
All the difference.
Just don't go out on the highway.
You could never leave.
All right, well, that's our next meeting then. Anything else for the good of the order?
And make a motion, we adjourn.
We're adjourned. Now, somebody